I don't blame anybody for not wanting to be in comics retail.
Well, I mean, they did 25 years of it. It's not nothing.
Yeah.
Come on and visit for any occasion. So keep patting down waiting, comics and conversation. Keep the conversation moving along. Keep reading comics, keep your local store strong. If it's hard, then it's a job for the challengers. Comics and conversation, y'all.
From Challengers Comics and Conversation in Chicago, this is Contest of Challengers. And now, here are Patrick Brower and W. Dal Bush.
Well, Dal, we did it.
Did we?
Yes, we did it all last weekend.
What did we do?
What did you do all last weekend?
Oh, I don't remember.
You rearranged the store.
Oh, that's right. That's what I did.
How could you forget? Were you thinking of something? You think I was going in a different direction?
I had no idea what direction you were going in.
I see. We spent most of last week's episode talking about it.
We
and
did.
That was all from the standpoint of, this is a thing we're going to do, but will already have been done. But now we can talk about it as a thing we did.
That's definitely already done.
It's done.
Yeah. Well, it's not done.
Well, I mean...
Finishing touches.
Yeah. I mean, is anything in Challengers ever really done?
Not really.
I mean, sure, the rental section, that's done.
Sure.
Challengers Assemble art blog, that's done.
Uh-huh.
Parker's Pick, that's done.
Yep.
But what I mean is, the store is always evolving internally, and the layout changes will always be a thing we will do if we can find a better reason for something.
Stagnation is death.
That's not to say change for the sake of change, but we talk about that often, so we don't have to worry about that. So, what are your impressions now that it's done?
Positives and negatives.
Okay.
I think overall positive, but there's things that I knew going into this would be things that I would personally not be a huge fan of, but probably weren't reasons not to do it.
Like tacos?
Yeah. No, not like tacos.
You don't like tacos?
I don't, but that feels irrelevant. No, specifically the when we held the graphic novels on 14 bookshelves, we could arrange them evenly. It always looked, and I would take pains every couple months to rearrange them and resort them to make sure that they looked nice.
Yeah, there was a lot of math involved in the shelves. Dal would routinely count what we had as far as inches, and then divide it by shelf space, and then measure out each shelf every couple of months.
Yeah, the problem with splitting it up by genre is that there's only so many books in each section, so there's going to be some sections like horror and drama that are packed, and then there's going to be some sections like humor and crime mystery that are not packed. And that's something I'm not crazy about, but it's just an aesthetic thing that I'm not a huge fan of, not necessarily something that is wrong with the design.
I don't think people will legitimately notice unless they're looking for it.
I noticed, though, and that's the thing.
Well,
that's why it's a negative, is like, I will see it and go, but it's just my own personal preference.
There's a lot of things in Challengers that we do that too.
Sure.
And I'm not going to list them because I don't want to call them out to people. But did you ever notice those two spots on the ceiling above the windows and sidekicks that just have this weird yellow tint to them? You know, things like that.
Yeah.
Things like that. But there's nothing wrong with it. Yeah. It's just not the way you would prefer to have things look.
For sure. There's so many things where I can't... Like, it's a choice between two things. Each of them have positives and negatives. There is no perfect solution. Just based on physical reality. Like, the way to fix the problem I just had is, sell a bunch of drama stuff and horror stuff that we wouldn't restock, and then add a bunch of crime, mystery, and humor stuff. Like, there are no books. There's nothing to add to those sections. There's not stuff I want to get rid of from the horror section that I wouldn't want to restock. It's not possible. So I have to just be okay with it at some point. And again, it's not something that is, an empirical negative. It's nothing that I can point at and go, that is wrong. No one would fault me for saying that's wrong. It's just a personal preference thing. But overall, I hope it's successful. It turned out more or less how I expected it to, and its success or failure is mostly based on what customers make of it, not what I make of it. So it's hard to say, like, did it work out? Like,
We've gotten a lot of positive compliments from people, but most of those came from the internet announcements and the photos that we posted, not from people actually being in the store and
interacting
sampling
with it.
Yeah. And then there have been people who have been in the store and said that, it looks good, but it's also, they're not people that were looking for a book. However, you and I both saw immediate results and returns on it from people finding books and buying books. I mean,
for sure, yeah. There has yet to be any complication from it. There's nothing that someone's come up to the counter baffled by the new layout or unable to find something they're looking for. I mean, the questions we get from where books are the exact same amount we had before we changed things. And it's stuff where it's the most obvious stuff. Where's Green Lantern? What's going to be in the superhero section? Of course it is. And it's basically the same section it was before, but just someone didn't think to look. Like,
sure.
It's not that they couldn't find it, it's that they didn't try.
Yeah, there's definitely two different kinds of customers in any type of retail establishment. It's the people that only ask for help under pain of death.
Right. You have to stop them before they leave to go, hey, was there something you weren't finding? And then, like, grudgingly, they'll be like, well, I was looking for this. And it's like, oh, I will show you where that is.
Or the person that walks in and just spouts what they want and expects you to get it for them and put it in their hands.
Yeah. Most of the second grouping are people who don't normally go to comic shops. Like, people that we'll see over the holidays, that kind of thing, where it's not worth their time to learn your layout and where things are because they're not coming back. It's not of interest to them. They're there to get this thing that they're told to get. So they're filling a list, nothing more.
Personally, I'm the first shopper whenever I'm out, and for example, Home Depot, I will only ever ask if I can't find a thing, but if I have to ask, I've looked everywhere, and I think I have a pretty good knowledge of how Home Depots are laid out, and even if there's a thing, I'm like, well, where would this be? I would look where I would expect it to be first.
Man.
For example, a shelf grabber, a claw that has a 2-foot or 3-foot reach to get something in a space that you can't get at. Where do you think that would be located in a Home Depot?
No idea. I was about to say I'm the exact opposite in Home Depot. The first thing I want to do when I get there is just ask somebody. I don't know where anything is. I don't know how any of it works.
Well, the grabbing claw would be in the Home and Garden section.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that was a thing.
Sure. We have a Home and Garden section now too, right?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
That's where we keep a lot of books
on the sidewalk.
With the graphic novel separation, we did have to change one of the categories we had.
That's true.
Turns out that action, adventure, war, western just wasn't a big enough section to merit its own.
No, it would have looked really light on content.
It was maybe 2.5 full shelves.
Yeah, it basically, each shelf would have been like 20% full. It would not have looked good.
So we merged all that into the catch-all series genre of drama.
Yeah, the drama section was way too big. Mostly, the drama section we'd kind of miscalculated, not based on number of books, but on the fact that so many drama, romance, reality-based, literary, non-fiction-y books are way too big. Just so much in that category is, 200 and 300 page books. It's stuff like Blankets and Spinning that are gigantic, not stuff like, an average Batman graphic novel. It's like 140 pages.
Yeah.
So, drama might not have more books per se than an average superhero shelf.
They just have thicker books.
They're just way bigger books.
I mean, Essex County, for example, is as thick as a Marvel omnibus.
Yeah, just a lot of stuff that isn't necessarily like serialized, so it doesn't, you can't split it into 10 slim volumes. It's just one gigantic book someone worked on for 2 years. So it's 300, 400 pages.
Yeah. So that was a Audible called at the end of the night.
Yeah. Luckily, it didn't take too long to combine those sections and relay them out. It's just that we had to make some new signs that are currently being printed at FedEx office and need to be picked up tonight. And then pretty much that, along with new signage for the pop vinyl section and the game section. Pretty much it.
Yeah, and the whole ordeal took us longer than expected, but not... We didn't go beyond your drop dead, we're leaving effort time timeline.
About 6.5 hours. And I'd said at 7 hours, it's like, that's it. I'm not staying a minute past 7 hours no matter what's finished.
I mean, there was more we could have done, but it was also... There's more that could be done during the store.
Yeah, and luckily it was all stuff that could be done fairly quickly on Sunday. So a lot of stuff that I'm like, oh man, this is going to take me all day, actually just took a couple hours. So it was pretty much ready to go.
And then by some point on Monday, it was...
Yeah, and then I wrapped up the superhero layout stuff on Monday. And yeah, it's pretty much all done except for some signage on Monday night.
And to the best of my recollection, as far as the new release section goes, the new this week area, I only had to give one person directions on Wednesday.
I saw a couple people who would do the thing where they'd walk back to where they expected it to be, which is now toys, and then they'd sort of walk back to where the rest of the comics are, thinking, oh, okay, I guess things are filed in again. And then I'd see them walk the shelf and look for a specific title and then not see the new issue there that they were expecting, and then sort of walk around a little more. And this is me at this point noticing what they're doing, and I could have said, hey, the new releases are going to be around the corner in the back, but I genuinely wanted to find out, can they find it?
Yeah.
Like, as an experiment. Like, if someone was about to leave, I'd be like, hey, was there anything I can help you find? And then we would do the dance of, I was looking for new books, and I go, oh, they're back here now, and whatever. But I'm like, will they find it? And both people found it.
Yeah.
They eventually, like, found the section in the back, came up to the front with the new books, and I'd say, did you find everything okay? Was there anything we're missing? Nope. Found everything and ready to go.
There were a couple of times I said to people, hey, I see you found where the new books were. And they each said, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, duh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mentioned this to someone on Wednesday, I think. The benefit of a small square footage like our store is that there's only so many places things can hide.
Right.
So 12 feet of new books and new graphic novels and new toys and new pops, they're only going to be so many places. So once you've looked on every wall, you've found them.
That's true. And this may have been a little bit smaller of a new release week than we would have preferred to debut this new layout. So it may make, by now the shelves are probably thinned out.
Probably.
But looking ahead to a week like next week where there's 4 different covers for Dark Knight's Metal and multiple Doomsday Clock covers, and we're going to really
covers for Saga.
appreciate having the extra space.
For sure.
And I think that area just looks good. And first thing on Wednesday, I was over opening some boxes of boxes with my back to the new release wall, and I wasn't in anybody's way.
Yeah, and one of the other benefits is that it's on a wall that's opposite a window, and it's pretty close to that window, so it's a nicely lit section all day, as opposed to where it used to be, where it was around a corner, and you had some good like overhead lighting, but not a lot of natural light, because you had the bookshelves to one side, and there was that little alleyway. So I think going forward, it will be an easy section to find and navigate,
especially if that building across the street ever gets changed.
I did have to pull the blinds midway through the day because I'm like, oh, it's too bright back here.
It's going to happen.
The light's just bouncing off of these covers.
Yeah. But no, I think it looks good, and I think it's easy to find things.
Yeah.
And
I hope it all works for people.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see a change in the way people navigate the store. Like, I think up until now, people would come in, walk past us at the counter, and then take a right down the the eastern half of the store. Mm-hmm. But now I think they're going to turn right immediately when they come in to head on to that.
Yeah, maybe
that new area. We'll see. It's nothing that matters either way. I just was wondering if it's a change in direction we'd notice.
Oh, I mean, we'll definitely notice. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's so early in this new layout to really have a feel. And as of yet, we haven't. Only Kent has worked on a day with it to get a feel for it. So I'm interested to see this weekend how it goes with other people finding it for the first time. And,
yeah, definitely.
And seeing it and teaching everybody how to very quickly find the genre coding in book listings. I don't think it's going to be a problem for anybody.
I hope not. And I mean, at worst, like if you have to do it visually, like if you have to physically go to the shelves and find stuff, much like finding the new section, there's only so many places for things to hide.
Right.
So if you're expecting to see, a string of graphic novels from a series, if it's not in the first section you're looking at, it's probably in the second or third. I mean, there's only so many different genres. And there's only so many shelves.
Are all the Sidekicks books already broken down into Sidekicks?
Yeah, they have been for a long time.
Okay. And you'll eventually get to, what, like a how-to or...
Yeah, I just have to create a category. I just don't know what it's going to be called. I'll probably create one for local books, too, because there's some stuff that's uncategorized, because the few local books that have barcodes need to get categorized. It wasn't a priority, because genuinely that stuff, I don't think people will look for in another section.
Yeah, you would know where to go looking for that.
If someone's like, hey, I'm looking for the art of whoever, it's not going to be like, is that going to be in drama? Or is it... No, it's in the art of sections where it always been. Yeah. Right there.
Yeah, not going to be a problem at all. So, changing gears, it is time for us to make up new business cards.
Is it really?
We're just about out, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, my question to you is... do we just reprint what we have, or do we go with a new design after 10 years?
I'd be interested in a new design.
Now, going with a new design, do you think it's something that we should do ourselves, or would you rather outsource it?
I'd rather outsource it. I liked how the last ones turned out, mostly because we gave it to someone and said, can you do something with this? And they're like, how about this? And we're like, that's great.
And then my follow-up question, I imagine you know where this is going. Who do you want to ask?
There's a few local people I'm thinking of, but we'll talk about it off the air, because I don't want to name names and have this get back to anybody who we picked or didn't pick.
Or, you mean have someone feel bad about not
I definitely don't want that.
Yeah. I had this question earlier in the week, but I figured I'd wait and keep it for the podcast.
Sure.
Which is dangerous, because oftentimes when I do that, I forget the questions, and then midway through the episode I think, what was it I wanted to ask?
There was a thing we were going to talk about.
Yeah. So, I'm curious to hear who you might offer it to, and honestly, I would have gone either way. If you had said, let's just remake the Ryan Clater ones, I would have done that. But
that's a good fallback. Like, if we either can't agree on someone or we don't like how stuff turned out, we still got those. None of the information's changed, so it's fine.
Yeah. We are, as we mentioned last week, coming up to our 10th anniversary as a store. I have an idea of what I want us to do for the next episode, but I think I'll keep that, just like you're keeping your business card ideas, I'll keep that to non-audio.
Got it.
A couple of weeks ago, there were some neat little audio drop-ins I had prepared for the podcast that we never got around to using. And I think they will make it into this episode.
Cool.
They are a thing that, one is me reading a whole Twitter feed from Colleen Duran.
Okay.
And, I didn't have audio. It's not like it was
I understand.
thing. And the other is a video that I pulled the audio from of Jean Lun Yang talking about what comics can do for readers.
Cool.
So which one do you want to hear first?
Let's do the Colleen Duran one first.
Okay, fine. Here it is. This is a post from Twitter from comics creator Colleen Duran. You can follow her at Colleen Duran at COLLEENDORAN. It was from March 3rd. People who go on about sales in comics, knowing nothing about comics history, not able to grasp that once there were a few publishers making comics with a lock on the industry, now there are hundreds of companies, thousands of books, thousands of choices. Bestseller list at comics distributors used to cover about 100 comics, and that's about all that were published every month. The distributor catalogs are barely pamphlets then. They became tomes. There were only a few graphic novels for sale every month. There's a long tail of published comics that simply did not exist 40 years ago. Almost no indies, no webcomics, almost no graphic novels, very few books in libraries, little bookstore penetration, a small, simple system that is now broad and complex. I used to self-publish, by the way, and at one point I had about 16 distributors for my comics. 16 distributors. That world does not exist anymore, and it had a lot to do with Marvel's purchase of Heroes World back around 1995-1996. That was a market quake. By the way, people on the internet claiming the interjection of women, people of color, gays with different viewpoints is killing comics. And this must be true, because it seems many people are making this claim is the logical fallacy of argumentum ad populum. You're welcome. Raina Telgemeier is wiping the floor with all of your sales. And one more thing for some folks who are a bit slow on the uptake. Guess who else's sales ain't what they used to be? Every single hot indie comic ever published. Sales drop in comics was across the board, folks. Books that moved 100,000 copies in the indie press now moving less than 5,000. Don't make me name names. Those sales drops had zip to do with creator politics and everything to do with a new market paradigm. Maybe 5 or 10 indie books to compete with back in the day, few choices. Now hundreds of fantasy, science fiction, drama comics competing in the same market. Much harder to make an impact. Superhero comics took a huge hit in individual title sales because all comics in the direct market took a huge hit in sales. A lot of people out there still in bitter denial over it all. Long tail, heavy market competition, shrinking print market, rising publication costs, multiplicity of factors affecting sales, forces going back decades. Direct comics market never fully recovered from mid-1990s crash. Thousands of stores went down. Before the crash, there were about 9,500 direct market accounts. The resulting vacuum created an opportunity for small fry to expand and for comics publishers to push for sales into new venues, bookstores, libraries, where before they were not always welcome. I was there making those sales pitches. Previously, stores and the few remaining distribution outlets had little interest in small accounts. Afterward, they welcomed every sale. That was an opening for more small press, indie comics. And then came the internet. The rest is history, about which some folks are in denial. I'd go into detail about Marvel's Heroes World purchase and Ron Perlman gutting of the company in subsequent bankruptcy and the lawsuit with stockholders, but it's a long, complicated tale, and I am pooped. Okay, so someone opined, but what about newsstand? Comics used to sell great on newsstand. Yeah, but that was like 60 years ago. You know what else is a big thing 60 years ago? 34-cent gasoline, rabbit ears on TVs, and support for manned spaceflight. 1968 is around the time that the newsstand started to die, and the death of the newsstand is why there's a direct comics market. And the attrition of the direct comics market is why there's a push into bookstores and digital markets. Let me explain. Comic sales had been slipping to varying degrees since Frederick Wertham and his crazy cronies on Capitol Hill tried to censor the heck out of the comics industry during the 1950s pervy comics content scare. Superhero comics, for better or worse, were the main survivors of the Great Comics Purge. But even though sales managed to remain in the hundreds of thousands for major titles, the world changed around the market. Comic books were cheap and distributed at mom-and-pop shops all over the country, most of which no longer exist, slowly replaced by chains like 7-Eleven. I never bought a comic in a mom-and-pop shop because even though I'm a crusty comics veteran, mom-and-pop shops were going the way of the soda jerk and the egg cream, which a significant portion of my audience here will now run to look up because these are new terms to you. And it's not that comics didn't have an audience, it's that they didn't pay, and they had new competition for attention. You know, TV. We only had 3 channels, but it was free. Also, comics just didn't make the big bucks. Remember when Martin Goodman, head honcho of Marvel, wanted to shut it all down and just do magazines about golf and softcore porn? But we don't judge. Anyway, back to those mom-and-pop shops. Here's something a lot of folks don't get. You gotta make a profit on this stuff, folks, and in 1968, the cover price of a comic was around 12 cents. Now, adjusted for inflation, that's maybe $1, but here's what you have to consider. To make a profit, the store has to sell enough volume of the 12-cent product to justify the shelf space, and that store isn't getting 12 cents, they're getting about 30 to 40%. Okay, now how many comics do you have to sell at a take of about 3.5 cents per copy in order to justify the rent on the rack space in your store? Answer, a lot. Especially when that rack space could be going to higher priced magazines. Now, unsold copies are returnable, so you can get credit, but factor in the cost of doing business, of reserving the space for product, then sending back the unsold product. Returnable product gets a higher discount. Direct market product is sold at about 60 to 70%. That discount is what the distributor gets from the publisher, and the distributor gets about 30 to 40% on returnable, so a mom-and-pop store was getting a razor-thin margin on every copy they sell. Pennies. After your books don't sell, you either sign an affidavit return form and throw the unsold books in the trash, or you strip the covers and send them back. Or do what some stores do, strip the covers to show books were destroyed, and send covers back for credit. Some stores would just sell the comics with the stripped covers after, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, bottom line is, mom-and-pop stores could not compete with the growth of retail chains and slowly died off. And comics, at their 12-cent cover prices, were not profitable for people trying to sell them, except for these newfangled head shops springing up in major metropolitan areas where devoted comic fans could sell comics at a tiny profit and make money on something new. Old comics. The old comics market simply did not exist before and was a new profit center that supported the new comics market, and the comic shop began distributing comics to other comic shops, and the direct market was born. So there you have it, a brief history of the direct market of comics from longtime comics pro Colleen Doran.
Very cool.
As seen through her eyes in small, I was going to say 140 character chunks, but it's not that anymore. It's double that.
And so much more.
All from Twitter. Some big news in comics retail this week.
It's true.
As you know, comic sales are interesting at the moment.
Uh-huh.
And some stores are weathering it differently. But I don't know that what we're about to talk about is really related to sales at all.
I don't think so.
No, but it is Midtown. Not Midtown. Why did I say Midtown?
So close.
It's not.
So
it's not
close.
Midtown. It's a completely other coast.
A lot of the same letters.
True. Meltdown Comics in California, in Los Angeles, is closing their store.
Yeah, after 25 years, they're closing it down. It's weird because I've read a few things, and the going away letter from Gaston is not super specific about what's happening and why. There's just a general sense of, like, we're closing it down, there's another thing coming, we don't know what it is, we're not talking about it yet.
Yeah, we've been
You'll hear
working
about
on it
soon.
for 2.5+ years.
So it
Meltdown
sounds,
2.0.
It sounds like the next thing is way more of a performance space and way less of a retail establishment.
Yeah.
Why that's happening could be because the performance space brings in way more money than the comics and pop culture stuff, which is definitely possible. Or it could be because the building they're in, they might not be able to stay in.
I heard that building was sold and it's going to become condos.
Yeah, like back in 2014, I think it had sold, and the expectation was it would become a mixed-use building, commercial on the ground floor, residential above it, and that may be what's... They've been building to this. Like, they might have known for a while this was going to happen when really it just got announced, like, 2 weeks before they're closing.
Yeah, they're closing soon. March 31st.
Yeah, huge liquidation sale stuff right now. So if you're in the LA area, just get it before it's gone.
But with all the stores that have been closing recently, all the announcements have been this sad, like, hey, we're really sorry. You guys meant the world to us. You know, we don't want to do this. Theirs is, we're closing the shop, but oh man, things are coming.
Yeah, there was a thing, I want to say it was about Meltdown, but there was a thing a while back where I don't know if I'd heard this from someone or read it someplace. It was a while back. But it was definitely in the midst of Meltdown starting to do more performance stuff. The Nerdist podcasts, the comedy stuff with Kumail and Emily and Jonah.
Yeah.
That kind of indicated that, like, the comic stuff was not really the store's passion anymore. They were way more interested in the live shows and the publicity and the celebrity stuff, and they kind of weren't that into the idea of being a comic shop anymore. And they demonstrated that in big ways and small ways. Now, this is all third-hand at best, so, you know, I hope that's not too mean to say about a store that I've not been to and heard nothing but good things about in the retail community. But yeah, people who had been there and people who had events there recently, like within the last 5-6 years, kind of indicated that Meltdown's heart was not in comics retail anymore. So this wasn't a huge surprise, and certainly if the reading between the lines is correct and they are doubling down on being a performance space, then I think that would be a kind of indication that, yeah, that was where they were trending the last few years.
Which, I don't blame anybody for not wanting to be in comics retail.
Well, I mean, really 25 years of it, it's not nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have more time than they have, but
Okay.
that's not true. I don't know what their stories were before Meltdown.
I don't know.
I don't know that they came into it cold or something like that.
No, I thought they came out of Gold Maple originally, some of the folks there.
Yeah?
I thought. I mean, maybe I'm getting that wrong too. I don't know.
I do remember a very long time ago at a retailer meeting in, gosh, I don't even know where. Most likely, I don't know, California or Texas, something like that. I met somebody who worked at Meltdown who was willing to leave Meltdown and start a new store, perhaps for the company that we worked at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And when discussing that with the people we worked with, and there was some, vague interest, this one guy at Meltdown he started scouting spaces and sending prospectuses, and it was just something that the place we used to work for was not really ready to pull the trigger on. But this guy was really excited and was not happy working under Gaston.
Oh, okay.
but it was fun to think about for a little while.
Sure.
And who knows? And one of the things that they did was they made a list. They posted a list of all the close and other well-known stores in LA that people could go to. Mega City One was the one they were pushing people toward to keep the same discount terms and things like that, subscription terms. Mm-hmm. And they mentioned a lot of stores, some I hadn't even heard of. They did not mention Golden Apple.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there are a few stores I didn't see them mention, but I don't know the geography of those neighborhoods, so I don't know if they just listed like the few stores close to them and not stuff farther away. It would be like if we were listing stores and we said, "Oh, you could go to Gmart, you could go to Dark Tower, you could go to Chicago Comics," and people are like, "Well, why didn't they mention Pastimes? Pastimes are real far away."
Yeah,
I mean that's why.
You don't think people would do that?
Yeah, we would list the local stores because we assume that most of the people who shop with us are local.
That's a weird little segue, but speaking of Pastimes,
Uh-huh.
we did have the Nerdologues in for a live event over the weekend.
How was that?
It was real good.
Cool.
There were a lot of people that showed up. It was very funny. It was all wrestling themed, and the connection is one of the main guys from the Nerdologues, Eric, used to be the comic guy over at Pastimes and Niles. He's not anymore, but that's one of a few stores that he's worked at.
Okay.
And he pointed out that the Nerdologues did like maybe their third show ever 6 or 7 years ago in Challengers.
Jeez.
And now here they are, and it would have been over like at 6 years because it's their seventh season.
Okay.
As a wrestling fan, this show was great. Everybody's telling wrestling stories, or they're not even necessarily wrestling fans, but stories that they've gotten from friends of theirs who are into wrestling or things they do, including actual wrestler Paloma Star. She was there, and she was the headliner. She closed it out.
Cool.
But each Marty and Sarah from Marty and Sarah Love Wrestling had a bit.
Neat.
And Marty was running his past me before he went on, and I got to make some suggestions, and he used one of my jokes.
Cool.
Pretty happy with it. But he immediately gave me credit, which I think takes some of the, like, he should keep it as his and use it as his. I think that it takes a little bit away from it.
Sure.
And of course, we've worked together in the past, and I use that term very loosely because I suggested an episode of Creative Has Nothing For You for Colt Cabana and Marty DeRosa. And they took my script and punched it up and made it so much better.
Cool.
And even with this one joke now, Marty still was able to polish it.
Nice.
And make it better than what I gave him. But yeah, it was really fun. And there's a newer comedian to the Chicago area who is interested in putting on comedy shows at Challengers. I'm like, let's wait and see. We've done this before. Well, we are not Meltdown.
No.
We definitely are not Meltdown.
No.
New announcements, new comics that they've announced this week? Anything that jumps out at you? Like Dazzler or That's All I Remember?
Yeah.
A new Deadpool series?
Yeah, I mean, nothing really springs to mind. Most of the stuff was either stuff that confirmed things that we talked a little bit about last week, like Justice League, that now is George Jimenez and Jim Chung who's drawing the first issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rest of the stuff was just stuff trickling out before June Solicits came out, so it was never going to be the biggest books.
Sure.
It was going to be, look, you're going to hear about this next week anyway, but here's a little bit of PR on a Dazzler one-shot miniseries. I don't even remember.
One-shot.
Yeah, I don't think there was anything really huge.
Cullen Bunn says that Deadpool Assassin is most likely his last round with Deadpool.
Okay, he's done a lot.
I mean, never say never, but as far as he knows, this is
It'll
the
be like
last
his
thing he's
6th
doing.
or 7th miniseries with Deadpool, so that seems like a lot.
So at this point, I'm still working on the May orders, which, oh my god, are massive.
They are. There's a lot of books coming out.
And this new previews has even more that's going to slip in at the end of May.
Yeah.
The first Man of Steel,
Yep.
as well as all those Hanna-Barbera DC crossovers.
Mm-hmm.
But the new previews isn't officially out, and I haven't looked online at anything. You've gone all the way through it.
I haven't. It wasn't even up yesterday.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh.
I checked a bunch of times because I wanted to work on it, and Diamond didn't post it.
Oh, but I assume you've read, like, Marvel solicits, DC solicits.
Yeah, Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, maybe? Some IDW? It's tough because the site that does the best with it is CBR, and they're impossible to navigate because they have some of the most intrusive advertising of any comics or comic adjacent pop culture website. Comicbook.com is the worst by far.
Yeah.
By a mile. I literally could not get through that site the one time I tried to go to it. CBR is pretty bad. Yeah.
I was trying to get to the Meltdown article on Nerdist yesterday, and my computer wouldn't let me. It kept saying, "This is not a safe site.
Nope,
don't go to that site.
not.
Don't go to that site." So I did it on my phone
Sure.
and got through it easily, of course.
Yeah, so no, I've not gone through the bulk of the catalog, so I can't really speak to how big a month it is or what's coming out, unfortunately. I wish I had. Jesus, it puts me a day behind everything I need to do,
Oh, man.
which was the same last month, and it was frustrating because everything was kind of piling up. So now, it's tough because I can't really work on it at home because of the way that basically I have a trackpad, not a mouse, and a lot of the highlighting and deleting and stuff is way harder to do on a trackpad. So it's just I can't really work on it at home. Not the way I could do it way faster at the store.
Last month, things were being held for, like, Image Expo and Comics Pro or Emerald City or things like that,
No
right?
idea why it wasn't up. I know the consumer side was up at least this morning. I don't know. So it may have just been, 24 hours behind or whatever. So I haven't checked today to see if it's going up because, again, I can't really work on it at home.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it'll be up by Sunday. Again, the consumer side is already up, so it must be up somewhere.
One of the things that Marvel had said that they were going to be doing moving forward based off of retailer criticisms is changing some of the thresholds for their Match 2 discounts. Like they were going to... They're still going to do them, but they're going to keep it in the family. It's not going to be tied to books outside of the book they're doing it with. So I am doing orders for May, and books like Avengers and Black Panther and Venom and Amazing Spider-Man 800 have discount offers based off of percentages. And the percentages go up to 350%. 350% of the series that currently exists. For example, Black Panther.
Yep.
Black Panther #1, while we expect to have more people interested, honestly, we didn't think that was going to be the case until pre-orders started coming in, and it's people that weren't already down for it. But I wasn't planning on upping our orders by 350% from the previous issue.
As always with the deep discount offers that Marvel has, the numbers they want you to hit are insane, but the additional discount they give frequently makes those numbers more achievable. We ordered a ton of X-Men Red #1 relative to what we were going to order normally because the discount levels made it essentially cost the same to order an additional 20 copies or whatever.
Yeah.
So you might as well get the extra 20 copies. Even if you don't sell them, you didn't really pay for them, so who cares? But it just means that when we look at the shelves and we see a ton of copies of X-Men Red left, that book was not a failure. It sold substantially more than X-Men Gold and X-Men Blue are selling. But we ordered way, way more.
Yeah. And also it has so few subscribers based off of Blue or Gold.
It's true. But we sold out of X-Men Red too, like within a week.
Yeah.
So, yeah, wow.
And then Venom #1 is... Oh, no. Spider-Man 800 is matched to Venom Inc., Alpha or Omega.
Okay.
And I feel like that one is
Seems rude.
really pushing it.
Yeah.
It's tactic because it's Amazing Spider-Man Venom Inc. It's still a Spider-Man comic, but
All of those numbers, though, are about pushing you outside your comfort zone. It's not about moving you from ordering 20 copies to 30 copies. It's about moving you from ordering 20 copies to 60 copies.
well, having gone through some recent Venom changes where they were bringing Eddie Brock back, and we're like, all right, we'll jump, we'll get a bunch extra and see how this works. No one really cared.
No.
So as much as Donny Cates is doing great things for Doctor Strange and for Thanos, I don't expect Venom to have that kind of mega jump immediately. I think people are going to need to
I don't know.
hear.
It's tricky. I'll have to look at the exact numbers and stuff, because I was planning on going kind of heavy on Venom #1. But,
Were you?
But, a book that we would order, 15 copies of now, I probably would go up to 40 or 50 for a Venom #1 by Donny Cates. But, their demand at Marvel could be substantially higher than that, and I don't feel comfortable going to 100 copies or whatever.
No.
No
No.
way. even if like 40 of those are free, it's like you're still making me pay for 60, and I don't want to do that.
So far, I did the math to get to Avengers #1 and Black Panther #1, but we're not. I don't think we're doing it for Venom.
Okay. Well, I can always take a look at that.
I mean, I did it last night, and I can't remember. So, who knows, really?
Who knows?
Oblivion Song, we're just about, according to the numbers, we have 1 copy left.
We just got 1 copy back in. We've been out for like a week.
Yeah, huh.
We're going to restock, though, next Wednesday.
Yeah, next Wednesday.
It just took a while for it to show up.
But that's like 2 years ago, our initial order would have been maybe double what we did.
Sure.
But we still ordered it the highest that we do for books.
We ordered a lot.
That are not Saga.
Sure.
For Image. And it made me wonder what Death or Glory #1 should be. Like, Gideon Falls is doing really well for us as well.
Yeah.
And we split orders over the 4 covers.
I mean, a lot of what our Image #1 orders come down to is, are they offering any sort of deal? Like Kick-Ass and Hit Girl both had ones where if we ordered, I think, over a certain threshold, it was returnable.
Yeah.
So we're like, well, we might as well clear that threshold, because fine.
And looking back, both of those were too low.
Yeah. And Gideon Falls is doing the same thing for like the first 3 issues. So we're not necessarily going to cut our numbers for issue 2, assuming some people don't pick it up, because let's assume everybody does, and if they don't, we return it. No big deal.
Why wouldn't you, though? If you got #1, oh my goodness.
People always do, though. Kick-Ass and Hit Girl had both things where if you ordered issue 2 at the level of issue 1, it was returnable. So it's like, well, we'll keep our numbers the same.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, with Kick-Ass and Hit Girl, and like most of Mark Miller's new books, the interest isn't there. The pre-orders for these 2 series were anemic.
Yeah, they're not great, but the Kick-Ass and Hit Girl have both been adding readers to it, and it seems like the people who have read it have been enjoying it. People who tried out issue 1 have told us they wanted to add it as a series.
Yeah.
So I think it'll do fine. But yeah, for books like Death or Glory, it depends on what they're offering. Like, the 2 main things that Image has been offering is either maximum discount, which is what they offered for Isola #1. So we went heavier on that because, fine, you're making it more profitable for us to stock this book versus another #1, and we're excited about this creative team and this concept, so we might as well bet on it. And the other thing is returnability. So if Death or Glory offers one of those, yeah, we'll go heavier on it. But if they offer, like, there's some books, like, I can't remember what recently, Crude maybe, something else?
Yeah.
Dead Hand? Something was like nothing. And it's like, okay, well then...
Analog, maybe?
I'm not going to risk it. I don't think it was Analog.
Oh, I don't see Dead Hand being a book that has any major incentives tied to it.
Well, it was just a book where I specifically went in saying, okay, well, how are you going to sweeten this for us? And the answer was, we're not. So it's like, okay, then, again, not going to stick my neck out on this.
Sure.
Like, we're going to judge on pre-orders, and we're going to order a decent number for a first issue, but not, we're not going to bet on it, essentially.
Right.
And that's, I feel like nearly every publisher, like, that's what I'm looking for, is like, how are you going to make it more reasonable for me to get behind this in a sizable way? Like, is it going to be returnable? Is there going to be a steeper discount? Is there going to be something beyond just, we have a new #1? Because that's not nearly good enough anymore.
Given the choice between overship...
No one does overships anymore, really.
Well, no, let me finish.
Sure.
Between overship, returnability, I can't think of a third, like variant covers. What do you want publishers to offer?
I think the most reasonable thing is returnability, because I think that puts less of an emphasis on the retailer, and it puts an equal amount of support in the hands of the publisher and the retailer. It's not asking either side to carry more than they should.
But what if it's only percentage returnability?
I don't like that. I don't think that's a very strong one. I think it's a money where your mouth is sort of thing. Like, overships basically are... maybe if the overship's returnable, that could be a thing, but that seems like it's a lot of, like, we're giving you this product essentially on consignment, and then you can pay for it if it's sold. This is, with returnability, we're paying up front. You got the money.
Yeah.
If you're offering returnability, you're saying, we don't think this is a book you're going to get stuck with. And we're so confident about that if you do get stuck with it for any reason, send it back. And I know that sometimes it comes up like, well, retail publishers can't afford to be getting back all these extra copies that they're going to get. Most stores, even if something's returnable, are not going to order that much because they have to pay for it up front. If I think I can sell 100 copies of something, and you're saying it's fully returnable, I'm not going to order 1,000 because I can't afford to pay for 1,000 up front.
True.
I might order 150 or 200. So at worst, you're going to get back, maybe what I over-ordered, but you're not going to get back all 200 copies or whatever. So,
and hopefully the theory is you will see what you could sell of that book and order more, 2, 3, 4, etc.
Yeah. That's why it's worth doing for a publisher, because I got to assume most publishers look at the numbers they get in and go, we thought this would sell more. Of course, you should.
I know we do that.
Yeah, you should always think it's going to sell more. You should always be wanting those numbers to be higher. Like once a year, should someone be able to look at a book that came out and went, that sold way more than I wanted? Like you want it to sell more. So so do the things that get more in there, because the person picking up a copy of new comic book at Challengers technically is not the publisher's customer. We are. That person who picks up the book is our customer. So the main goal of the publisher is to get retailers to buy more copies for their stores to resell. So yeah, things like returnability show me that a publisher has confidence in it. It makes me think this is a book I want to get behind. I get that it can be tricky for a publisher like Image because of how their business model works and how the individual creators have a greater participation in how the books are funded and paid for. But I mean that's the stuff I need to see, especially for. I don't need it for Dazzler #1. I have a decent idea of what Dazzler #1 by that creative team featuring that character from that company is going to sell. But something like Death or Glory, I don't know, man. Is it going to sell Seven Eternity numbers? Is it going to sell Deadly Class numbers? Is it going to sell Black Science numbers? Is it going to sell
low numbers?
Yeah. What is it going to sell? Like,
I just wanted to be able to play in that board game.
So yeah, I would love to see returnability across the board from publishers, and yeah, certainly not some. If you want to make it like a jump through a hoop thing, fine, man, I'll jump through your hoop. You got to order X amount at this tier to get returnability. Fine, as long as they're returnable, then it's probably not a bad deal.
I think that putting any tier restrictions to returnability is just going to hurt the publisher, because if we were going to order like 10 copies and like order 50 is returnable, maybe.
Yeah, but Diamond will monthly send us the list of, at your tier you should be ordering this number of copies. So publishers got to have a basic idea of a store that's doing this much volume in a year and is qualifying for this discount should be able to sell this many copies of a book.
Yes, but how often do you look at those numbers and say, oh, go F yourself?
Occasionally, but I mean, they're coming from a place where they've generated a number.
Yeah,
they're looking at comparable stores and saying, yeah. So it's not gonna fit for every store, but I'm just saying if a publisher wants to make sure that stores are participating in this program in a real way, like yeah, you can make it a tiered, gated thing if you want. I wouldn't blame them for that. If they want to see copies on the shelf in stores, if they want to create a market for that book, sure. Tell us that at our discount we got to order 50 copies. We can always say no. We can always order 10 and have them not be returnable.
But they're never worried about the other way. They never say, hey, a store your size should only order 36 copies. You're ordering 70.
Yeah. No. We'll never be told that.
Save your money.
Once again, no one's ever going to look at their numbers and go, geez, those are way too high.
Yeah.
No publisher is ever going to say that.
That's not sustainable. We need to lower expectations immediately.
Nope.
Immediately.
Nope.
Out of all of the visual storytelling media that are out there, film, animation, television, comics is really the only one that is not time-bound. That's what I call permanent, which means that, when you're watching a movie or when you're watching an animated television series, the rate of information flow is actually determined by the creator of the content. It's not determined by the viewer. You could slow it down. You can go slow-mo, but it's not the same experience. Comics, on the other hand, with comics, the rate of information flow is firmly in the control of the reader. And for certain students and certain kinds of information, that aspect of comics, that control, makes for a very powerful educational tool. In an Algebra 2 class that I taught, whenever I was absent, I would create these comics lessons for my students. And that was some of the feedback that I got from them, is that, with these comics lessons, it was visual, unlike their math textbooks. But then on top of that, the students themselves can control how quickly or slowly they read through that lecture. Unlike when I was lecturing in person, right? When I'm lecturing in person, I decide how fast or slow I speak. But when they're reading it in the form of a comic, If they didn't understand a passage within that comic, they could reread it as quickly or as slowly as they needed to. In the past, I think parents and teachers had almost a hierarchy of reading. They saw picture books as almost a lower form of reading than pure prose novels. And comic books, which is my area of expertise, were either left out of the equation altogether, or they were seen as like this middle point, the stepping stone between picture books and prose books. And if you were a good enough student, you wouldn't need that stepping stone. Things are changing now. I think more and more parents and teachers are realizing that pictures can be a very sophisticated way of communicating information. Back in the olden days, if you look at comics, often the picture was there to basically present what the words were already conveying. So you would have a caption that says, Superman punches Lex Luthor. And then in the picture, it would just show you Superman punching Lex Luthor, right? And I think that contributed to this idea that comics were meant for the mentally deficient. If you weren't smart enough to get the meaning of those words, then you could at least read the picture. Nowadays, though, I think if you look at the top comic book writers, the top comic book creators, the relationship between the words and the pictures is much more complex. Often, they will pass narrative responsibility back and forth. So in certain parts of a comic or graphic novel, the words will convey what the most important information is in that story. And then in the next passage, it'll get passed to the pictures. In the hands of a skilled creator, each of those forms of communication, the picture and the words, will be leveraged for what they're best at. There are other comics where the words and the pictures are actually contradicting each other. They might even be telling two different stories, describing two different realities, and they ask you as the reader to decide which one is true. I really think that to engage today's audience has grown up on stories. Every single one of us has probably consumed thousands and thousands and thousands of stories within our lifetime. In order to engage an audience as sophisticated as that, you need to have a sophisticated dynamic between words and pictures.
And that was Gene Luen Yang talking about comics.
Thanks, Gene.
We definitely have events coming up to mention, but I feel like the biggest one I want to hit, and we've gone into detail about it before, but we still have some space available for our Michael Morici writing seminar, where he's going to teach you how to write a pitch, and that doesn't matter if it's comics or movies or novels. I mean, he's a guy that's done them all and makes his living as a professional writer. So he has a seminar he'll be teaching at Challengers on this upcoming Thursday night, the 29th at 7 p.m., and it is a rare pay event, but all you're paying for is a copy of his new novel, Black Star Renegades. So you'll get a copy of that, and then the seminar is basically free. You just get a copy of the book. I'm excited to see what comes of it, because we have people that are looking for different things out of this coming, so that'll hopefully be a lot of fun. And then, before you know it, it's another installment of our book party with March on March 20. Wait, that's first, right? That's Monday.
Yeah, that's Monday.
That's Monday. That's this Monday.
Yep.
Right when this is coming out. Yeah. Okay. And then
The 26th.
Yeah, and then our anniversary party, and then before you know it, it's Easter, and then C2E2, and I imagine we will have a C2E2 wrap-up episode after that, depending on how that goes. This has been Contest of Challengers, a comics industry business podcast on the Yak Channel Podcast Network in Chicago. I have been your co-host, Patrick Brower.
I've been your other co-host, Debbie Dublish.
Remember, comics for everyone, every day. Thanks for listening.
And keep reading comics.
This has been Contest of Challengers. Thanks for listening. Keep reading comics. Challengers is located at 1845 Northwestern Avenue in the Bucktown neighborhood of Chicago. 773-278-0155. Keep up to date with new releases and events at challengerscomics.com. Like Challengers Comics on Facebook, follow @Challengers on Twitter, and help fund this podcast at patreon.com/challengers.